Well, hello, and welcome to episode 252 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. Michaela, last week we did a thing. We went to, I think it might have been the first showing of 28 years later, the Bone Temple, at our local Regal Theater, and we were taking a look at what we wanted to go see, and we said definitely want to go see this. Right? It's the follow-up to 28 Years Later, which came out, I think, last year was just a year ago. Time is doesn't make any sense anymore. But we saw it on opening day, and I have to say, it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was way better than I was expecting it. Yeah, it's 6 months ago. 28 years later came out last June. So I love this idea. How about we don't wait a year or 2 years
They
to
should have
be
called it
able
six
to
months
see?
later, the Bone Temple. Then, if that was the case.
Well, no, because it's actually taking place literally right after the other movie, which is
That's true.
awesome because, there's the kid who plays Spike. He is a young adult. If they waited a year, he would look 87 now. He'd look like a totally different kid, and we needed to make sure that he looked somewhat the
Did he look,
same
did he
because
look the
it's
same?
supposed to happen right next to each other. I'm looking at you, Stranger Things. Anyway, I think that it's actually really good that they do this thing where you wait 6 months instead of a year or two because
Mm-hmm, hmm.
I didn't have to rewatch the first one, and maybe it's a mistake. I didn't have to rewatch the first one to get really into the second one. And
That's
it's
true.
better when the second one is better than the first one. Is it okay that we say that? I loved this way better. I thought it was real good.
We're gonna circle back to that, and we can discuss that here when we get into the movie and see which where the chips lie in terms of which one we thought was better, and is that even a fair thing to compare the two necessarily in that way? So let's do this, Michaela. Let's go ahead and mix up a cocktail that's going to pay homage to really, I guess, kind of both of the groups of characters that we're meeting in this film, and harkening back to an old English tipple. For sure. So let's do this. Let's grab some whiskey, let's grab some Drambuie, and let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to mix up this week's drink.
So, Brian, I scoured the internet trying to think of a cocktail for this. And this is just sometimes Brian is just the genius. No, 80, 90,000, 99.9% of the time, Brian is the genius behind all of the things that happen that's amazing here at Drink the Movies. And this is just one more example because I scoured the internet and I was like, look, okay, this 28 days, 28 years later takes place in kind of the Northumberland area of the UK. And so I was like,
Mhm.
wouldn't it be cool if we found like a scotch, a whiskey or a gin from that area? And so I scoured my local store, Southern Spirits, shout out to you. They helped me find something. But then I was like, what am I going to do with it? I don't know what makes sense. And then as I'm thinking about this, Brian just sends me this really beautiful cocktail that apparently has existed for years. It's called the Old Nick, and there's a lot of Old Nick references if we're talking about God or Satan. At first, I'm not real sure which one we were talking about, but either way, um, Old Nick, the Old Nick. It's a good one.
The
Uh,
old Nick.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You were looking up cocktails, and I was sitting there. I think you were actually seeing Marty Supreme. As the thought dawned on me, I was like, I wonder if there is an Old Nick cocktail because I was not familiar with it prior to finding this recipe. And sure enough, there is. And this recipe happened to be all over the internet. The Old Nick, kind of in different variations. But that sent me on a bit of a rabbit hole. To go find out a little bit more about this. And apparently, the Old Nick is a cocktail that hails from England, particularly around London, the Savoy Hotel and stuff like that. That were doing all these fancy cocktails, kind of setting the literal bar on what cocktails were going to be in England. And this cocktail, it comes from like the mid 1930s, so it's super super old. But again, I'd never heard of this cocktail, and it was interesting to me because it uses an ingredient that we used not too long ago, just this past October, in a rusty nail. And that cocktail is pretty good, but I still didn't know what to do with my bottle of Drambuie beyond this. And this is kind of like a rusty nail, but a little bit different. And let's go ahead and just put one together, and then we can talk about it here a little bit, Michaela. So into your shaker tin is going to go 2 ounces of whiskey. Now, I found recipes that called for either like a blended Canadian whiskey or a rye
Mm.
whiskey. According to this, the original was rye whiskey, so you can use that. You can use the Canadian whiskey. I used rye for mine. Then you're going to add a half an ounce of Drambuie, which is like a honeyed Scotch liqueur there, half ounce of that, a half ounce of freshly squeezed orange juice, a half an ounce of freshly squeezed lemon juice, and 3 dashes of orange bitters. Go ahead and add some ice and give that a shake. Strain it into a well-chilled martini or coupe glass. I have mine in a coupe glass. Sip and enjoy. So, Michaela, the Old Nick was new to us. Referring to Satan as Old Nick, that was new to me too. But what about this cocktail? Is this new to you? Do these flavors work for you? What do you think?
It was new to me. And I had to go back and make sure that we were doing the same cocktail because it does look like a rusty nail at first glance. But then upon further inspection, the orange juice makes all the difference here, I believe. And Drambuie, we haven't used Drambuie in a little while. We were making jokes about 85-year-olds using Drambuie. I was able to use the Canadian blended. I had some Crown Royale, which is a Canadian blended
Hmm.
whiskey.
Hmm.
So I recommend using the regular. Don't use a flavored one here. Okay. They have a lot of flavors now. Everybody is in love with the peach. I don't know if you know this, but don't do that with this. That's my recommendation. But I was kind of wondering if I could ever find like a Northumberland blended whiskey. Like if I could find something in that
Mm.
area that was a blended whiskey, that would be even more like paying more homage. But alas, I could not find one. So I liked this. This was very boozy. It was very much, I'm really glad I had my year of whiskey and bourbon before this because I would have probably hated this before because
Mhm.
I wasn't ready for, that kind of mouthfeel and the way that it just kind of coats your tongue and like the taste of it. I probably would have preferred it with a rye because apparently I'm a rye whiskey kind of girl. But I will say if you're not like super into the dark liquors, a blended whiskey is probably going to be more up your alley anyway because it's not going to burn as much. It's not going to have the extra peat or extra moss. It's going to be very even. And so I kind of like that. I also feel like back in the day, you probably used something that was more blended if you were going to add it to a bunch of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, blended whiskeys tend to be a little like softer on the palate. That was kind of my concern, which was why I went with the rye whiskey because I was afraid that it might get a little bit too sweet with the blended
Mm.
whiskey and the Drambuie, which is a pretty sweet liqueur there. So I went with the rye, and I think that the peppery notes kind of cut through that just fine. So I like this. I like this quite a bit. It came together really easily, and now, yeah, I have a different use for that Drambuie other than just making the rusty nail, which I have been known to do ever since we did that episode about the things. So yeah, this was a good one. The old Nick there. Let us know if you've had an old Nick. Let us know if you had any good 28 years later, the Bone Temple cocktails, or if you have any other good cocktail recommendations, send those our way. But now, Michaela, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and strap in. 28 years later, the Bone Temple, it's a wild ride, and you just get straight into the action in this one. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple.
Spoiler warning for 28 years later, The Bone Temple. If you've not seen this, we're going to talk about it. You've been warned. There we go. We should do a double spoiler. Spoiler warning for 28 years later or 28 years later, The Bone Temple. You can't really talk about this movie without talking about all of the 28 years laters. So, you know what? We're going to start over. Spoiler warning
Spoiler
for
warning for
28 years,
anything that
28
happens in
something later.
28. Yeah. 28 days later,
Any
spoiler warning. Probably not a spoiler warning for 28 weeks later. But yeah,
or months.
definitely definitely going to or yeah, 28 weeks, 28 months, didn't no such thing. So yeah, so spoiler warning there. There also is something pretty major that happens at the end of the movie. So if you haven't seen this yet and you're wanting to go see it and you have not had that spoiled for you yet, we will give a kind of another spoiler warning here later in the episode before we talk about that in case you want to switch off and go see that for yourself. So this just released last week. Well, last Thursday, and we saw it at 2 p.m., the first showing there at a Regal Cinema. This was directed by Nia DaCosta. It was written by Alex Garland, who wrote the first 28 Years Later, who wrote 28 Days Later. This one stars, again, Alfie Williams as Spike, Jack O'Connell as Jimmy Crystal, who's the leader of the Jimmies. We're going to be spending some time with them. And Ray Fine is back as Dr. Kelson, here the man going nuts, dancing around all of those, the Bone Temple, I guess. Literally, he's
Mm.
got the name right there. So this is the second act of 28 years later. So if you haven't seen that, it's probably good to watch, right? Because this movie literally ends. I'm guessing probably within like an hour of the first film coming to an end because spoiler for 28 years later, at the very end of the film, Spike gets jumped basically by this group of the Jimmies, right? With the Jack
Yeah.
O'Connell playing Jimmy Crystal. They're there in these wild like zoot suit looking things. You're like, what is happening? Who are these people? Like it's almost comical at the time that it happens. It's completely unhinged. And then this movie opens with Spike in a pool, battling to the death. Good luck, Spike. Godspeed.
Godspeed, Spike. Um, yeah, we should talk about Jimmy first, the original Jimmy, Jimmy Crystal. We should talk about him. He made us feel really terrible and worried about him when he was a child in somewhere in Northumberland, where 28 years ago, the world was ending, and his poor auntie or somebody who cared about him put him in front of a TV with a bunch of other kids, watching the Teletubbies, is what I think they were watching, if
Hmm.
memory
Hmm.
serves. And bright colors, and everyone's freaking out. And his dad is a vicar at a church that's next door. And his dad thinks that the zombie apocalypse, which has happened, right, because of the rage virus, is God's like commandment, and he's like leading all these people to heaven while they're eating him alive, and it's pretty gruesome and terrible. But you think Jimmy is just a kid who's probably not going to make it 3 minutes after the last scene ends, but then he shows up with a bunch of Jimmies who look like the Teletubbies, in these weird suits, and he has somehow managed to create like a cult. And poor Spike, who is also a child who's grown up in this environment, um, well, he's grown up since the apocalypse, and he's fairly new to the outside world. Kind of gets thrust in the middle of that, and so one thing I really loved about this opening sequence was if you knew nothing, you were kind of screwed. And
Hmm.
I really like that, because to me, we see a lot of movies
I mean,
that
if
play
you
catch up.
left, if you did not watch the last 30 seconds of the first film, then you were you were going to be lost for a long time in this
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, you were going to be like, I don't know what I'm looking at. And I really love that because I think that movie producers are trying to make as much money as they can. And so they want to, there's this like moment where or this time period where they're playing catch up. I'm looking at you, Marvel, okay, where they're like, okay, we got to string 87 movies together in like 3 sentences. How do we do that? And spoiler warning, you don't. That's how you do it, is that you don't do it. You just expect people to go see the movies. And I loved that about this, where
Mhm.
if you were right in the middle of it and you didn't get acclimated, you were already in it, and you were terrified for poor Spike because they find themselves in like an old gym in a swimming pool, like that's completely hollowed out, and they're gonna fight this kid to the death with like knives, and poor Spike makes it out alive, but just by the skin of his teeth, and not because he's any good at fighting. He just got real lucky.
Mhm.
And they
Yeah.
kind of just watch this other guy die, and now they're like, "You're the new Jimmy," because there's 5 Jimmys. They're all called Jimmy, and you're the blue one now. So here's his wig, and it's like a bright like white blonde. I don't know where they found these wigs. I don't want to think about how they found the wigs. But
The wigs look pretty
but
good for being 28 years old at least, right? So, yeah. So, Spike is I don't know, probably like 10 years younger than this kid that he's meant to be fighting to the death because that's one of the things we learn about Jimmy Crystal's little group of Jimmies here is that Jimmies are replaceable, right? Like his endeavor is to have the strongest, I guess, fingers right on his fist here in this thing. So if you get captured by Jimmy Crystal and his group of thugs here, then if he thinks you're going to be a good fit, battle to the death, and whoever makes it out is going to stick around there a little bit. In the first film, it's more of Spike's story, right? It's kind of his journey. It's his journey of getting off of that. that island, coming like to the mainland, seeing kind of the way that the world is right now. Like it's more of his story, but he's definitely taking a back seat now as part of this group of the Jimmies, led by Jimmy Crystal. And yeah, I mean, it does kind of harken back to the first film. They make mention of kind of throughout the story about his youth, right? The Teletubbies
Mm.
gets paid homage there to that end. It kind of delves into, I guess, the psychological aspect of Jimmy Crystal here and how he's meant to view religion, right? Because you mentioned his father was the vicar there, and that's certainly going to leave some sort of impression on a 8-year-old right at the time of this impending apocalypse. How his father acted kind of in that sense, and we get kind of clued in straight away here to his motivations. Obviously, wants to kind of start this cult, and it's definitely leading a little bit more towards the satanic. And he keeps kind of praying and asking Nick, and you're like, who is Nick? Right? As Americans here, we don't know Nick from anything, right? And apparently it turns out that this Nick is Satan, meant to be Satan, that he's asking kind of for guidance in all of these things. And that was kind of the more interesting part, I guess, of Jimmy Crystal and his merry band there, I guess, um his was he really kind of communing with Satan, or did he really believe that he was communing with Satan, or was he really just kind of using that as a ruse to control the rest of the group? And we kind of learn more about that as the film progresses, but we get to spend a little bit of time with this group and interacting with some people, and it's definitely not good stuff that the Jimmies are getting up to.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that the scariest part about the first movie, 28 Days Later, was not the rage virus. It was what happens to the people who survive and
Mhm.
what kind of barbaric actions are humans willing to go to stay alive, to build an empire in that environment, to um, kind of, get higher on either the social ladder or like the the pyramid of castes, I guess, right? And it's really interesting to see. It's terrifying, but it's interesting to see how Jimmy does it because he doesn't even ask your permission. Like you don't swear fidelity to him, really. You're just in it, and you know that if you decide you don't want to be in it, they're going to do something horrible to you, and they're going to think it's funny, and it's going to be terrible. And so everybody in it are either just as psychotic as Jimmy or the Sir Jimmy, right? Or they are terrified and they're just trying to stay alive. But in order to stay alive, they have to commit these terrible acts. And we see firsthand some of these terrible acts happen, right? They happen upon this village where there's a family that's still surviving,
Mhm.
and they one there's a pregnant woman, and she gets away, but she goes to hide in a barn, and they take these people to the barn, and I don't even know they call it the I don't I it's so terrible what they do to them. And they do it as a quote unquote sacrifice to old Nick, right?
Mhm.
But, when Spike goes outside, he's trying to run away, and there's a girl, the Jimmy, who is played by Erin Kellerman.
Mhm. Yep.
She's like, dude, you got to get back in here. We need your help skinning these people alive or whatever the heck we're doing. And he's like, literally, I cannot do that. I just kill me. Like I cannot. And she realizes that, this is her chance to actually give into her humanity too and help him not have to do that. And so we start to see this break in this, in the five fingers that hold up this hand of Jimmy's, right?
Mhm.
Because she helps him, and she tries to like keep Spike safe and keep his emotional, I don't know, like keeps him from having to do these terrible things. And so from a psychological perspective, I think that is one of the most interesting things about this quote unquote horror movie is it's not we are I'm not terrified in this movie at all of the people with the rage virus. I am terrified of this psychotic Jimmy guy who's going to skin me alive while
Yeah.
and then cut parts of my body off while I'm still breathing.
Yeah, I mean she does do that. I mean she kind of looks out for him, but she mostly looks out for him just because she knows that, you know, Sir Jimmy there will kill him if he's not doing what he tells him to do, right? Or he'll tell one of his minions to do it because Jimmy Crystal doesn't do any of this stuff, right? He speaks it from old Nick's I guess lips to everyone else's ears, and then they go about performing this act. I think probably the it was like the most like harrowing kind of section of this. You mentioned that they go to this town and there's this group of survivors that are living kind of in this house, and then you see all the Jimmies in there having dinner, and immediately you're like, oh, that's not great. It's not not going to be good for any of these people here. They kind of go around. They make mention of the Teletubbies. The one girl does like her little like Teletubbies dance kind of thing, and then I think one of the woman there asks him like, "Why are you here?" And Jimmy Crystal is just like, "Oh, because we're going to kill you," right? I mean, it's very black and white, just like that. And then you see like the group of them like walking out of the house, and you don't know like what has happened yet. And like that was like the most like harrowing like moment of like the whole movie was just like this group of people like walking out of the house because you didn't know what had happened like inside of the house yet. So that was pretty scary. And yeah, of course, Spike is having to not even come to terms with this, right? So like Spike's like a little kid. I don't know how old he's meant to be, like 14, probably something like that. Um, and having to deal with all of this stuff. And that's kind of something interesting too that you brought up there with Erin Kellerman's character. Her name is Jimmy Ink, I think, is what
Mm.
she's referred to as in the film, because we don't know like she kind of has this crisis of conscience a little bit, but we don't know like how long has she been a Jimmy, right? Like was she like brought into the Jimmys like straight away? Is she like the same like age as Jack O'Connell's like head Jimmy? Like has she been doing this for the last 10 years? Is she also new to the group here, kind of? And kind of that dynamic I think is really pretty interesting. And then eventually they kind of stumble upon a man that Spike met in the first film, right? Jimmy Ink. Jimmy Ink stumbles upon this giant temple of bones. She sees a man down there like dancing around, covered in red. Who is that? If it's not Satan, of course. And she goes back and reports this to Jimmy Crystal. And I think it's really interesting, kind of watching Jack O'Connell's characterization here because I think like the way that he plays it, like you can tell that he knows that that's not really Satan, right? But
Mm.
he also
Yeah.
knows that if he can convince everyone else that it is, then that's just going to, kind of further the cement that he has. So cement the hold that he has over them, over that group, and kind of go on from there. So I think that that's really interesting. So now let's talk about Dr. Kelson, who we did meet in the first film, right? Spike goes there. He comes across him, I think, with his father. I don't know if he ever
Mother.
met him with his father, but then he definitely goes back with his mother there to try to get her some medical aid because Dr. Kelson was a medical practicing doctor back before the fall, before the rage virus. And we catch back up with him, and he's got a few interesting ideas about the state of the world at the moment.
Yeah. So he continues his bone temple, right? And there's a word for that. It's called an ossuary
Hmm.
memorial, which I learned. I was today years old when I learned that. That's exciting. But it's a memorial basically to any of the people that were killed following the initial outbreak. So Spike learns about this guy from his dad. Is he says, there's a guy out there who's still burning bodies, who's still like, from the rage virus, and this we meet him, and he's the one who helped Spike diagnose his mother with cancer, and he has access to a lot of drugs that you would think would have either expired or would have been used up by now. But he has access to all this stuff like morphine, and so
Well, he
you
kind
know
of
the.
he kind of circles back on that, right? Because he makes
Mhm.
mention that he has all of the morphine that had been in like an 80-mile like radius of there, which is pretty far
Yeah, pretty
in,
good.
in England. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is dwindling out now, and I guess I don't know how much morphine were you using prior
Well,
to recently,
fair,
right? So,
fair. But he's come up with this theory with the rage virus infected, right? The infected kind of seem to have, they don't really travel in packs, but they have like an alpha. And we learn about that in the first film. Well, the first half of this film, I guess, right? And there was one alpha in the original Bone 28 years later, where the alpha is killed, and then there's another alpha that goes into his place. And so we're familiar with this idea. Well, there's this one that Dr. Kelson has kind of an affinity for. I guess because he is the only alpha in the area, that sort of makes sense. But he calls him Samson. And, Dr. Kelson has been able to get away from all of these people and survive because he shoots them full of morphine and then usually just runs off.
Mhm.
What he does this time is he shoots this one full of morphine and he kind of stays to talk to him. And then the alpha comes back to get another fix. And I gotta say, we're 2 weeks into Danny Boyle movies, and really, I couldn't decide at this moment if we were watching like a version of Train Spotting, from a
Mhm.
dystopian place, right?
Right.
Because basically, morphine, it's not heroin. They are different things, but apparently this drug was strong enough where this rage virus infected person was like, I need more of that. I need more of it. So he comes back to this field. Dr. Kelson shoots him up again. And he's like, and they just kind of sit there together, like he's not ready to kill him all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so you kind of wonder, like, what's going on in the brain of like uninfected, because we've never really thought about that before this film.
hmm Yeah, that's one of the kind of questions I guess that Dr. Kelson proposes to, to himself, and I guess kind of to Samson. We see that we see through Samson's eyes, kind of right off the bat when we are first like reintroduced to this character who's coming back now for this second act of this 28 years later thing. Is he there's like a person laying on the ground and more or less like Samson kind of like hallucinates, right? It looks I don't know. It looks like some sort of like satanic
Mm.
like demon kind of a thing, and he reaches down and rips its head off with spine still attached. So that's not great. But so we kind of get the glimpse of what this is doing is the rage virus. Is it just causing hallucinations? Is that what Dr. Kelson is hypothesizing here? But yeah, he definitely knows that he kind of shoots Samson with morphine, and Samson will just become very docile and just kind of hang out there. And I think Dr. Kelson kind of wants to kind of test this theory, right? So he ends up giving him another dose of the morphine there as he comes back, and Samson kind of recognizes Dr. Kelson as someone who can provide. Maybe it's kind of like a pet in that way, right? Like your little dog is like, hey, that's the person that gives me food. I should be nice to them. Maybe it's the same kind of thing there for Samson in this instance, but he gives him kind of that other shot, and then. Dr. Kelson also takes a hit of the morphine and, kind of has this little daydream kind of a thing, and then ends up falling asleep. And then when he wakes up and he's like, well, my head is still attached. So apparently there is something to this. And he starts to ponder like what does he have available to him that could potentially get this virus out, right? I guess in theory, like a virus should be curable, right? It doesn't seem like it's literally changed your DNA, right? It's just some sort of bad cold thing that you got going on there. So, can it be treated? Can it be corrected? And Dr. Kelson's going to kind of use these interactions with Samson throughout, kind of the first two-thirds of the film to kind of test and to kind of prove this hypothesis. And even Dr. Kelson is like, well, I'm basically out of morphine now, so we'll try this other thing, speed it up, see if this works. And you don't really get a good sense on if Dr. Kelson really thought that he could, cure this whole disease, if he was just doing it to, scratch his own itch of curiosity, how much of this medicine was available to him, because certainly, we don't have the means here on the in the world to manufacture any more of it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because the only time we really see anything like this from a scientific perspective is in the very first 28 days later, right? Where the father, whose name I do not know, he's an amazing actor. We love him so much.
The Brendan Gleeson character.
Brendan Gleeson, yeah, when he gets some blood dropped into his eye, and he has about 10 seconds right before he's going to turn, and he looks at his daughter and he says, I love you. And then he's like, you need to get away from me right now. And
Mhm.
so you kind of, it's then really where if you're thinking about it enough, you're like, well, what happens right, in the mind of these people. And it's really interesting because for the first time we see that in this movie where it is like these demon things that look like they're about to kill you, and so you really are acting in self-defense, even though you're ripping people's spine out of their body.
Yeah.
And then I love the scene where after loading this guy up with Samson, loading the alpha infected guy up with antipsychotics, Samson goes back to the train that apparently he was on
Hmm.
when everything started to happen, and he kind of we kind of figure out where he was and what his brain has happened, what's happened inside his head since then.
Yeah, we
And
kind of get a
then
little flashback with it. Yeah.
yeah, and it's kind of interesting because in something like this, you really start to feel like the enemy is these zombies, and these zombies were human beings that had lives and probably saw terrible things before this virus got a hold of them. And so, and then when he kind of starts to speak, um, they the other zombies or other rage infected like rush at him as if he was no longer infected. They don't do that normally. And so I was super shocked. First of all, I was shocked that he could really speak because he said like moon
Hmm.
earlier, and that was a big deal. Dr. Kelson was like, "Should I kill you? Should I just because I don't know. I'm going to run out of morphine, and then you're going to kill me because you're going to be really, really fiending." And
Well, yeah, I
have
think
you seen
he
Train
was
Spotting? You'll kill
he
anybody.
was he was getting ready to kill him, I think, right? When he
Yeah,
said moon, and
yeah.
that, kind of prompted him. And it was interesting too to see, you brought up 28 days later, and I don't remember if in 28 weeks later if they did or not, but in 28 days later, I remember kind of that colonel or whatever he was, Major Henry West was there running that group of people, and they had an infected one, and they just had him like chained up outside because they just wanted to see how long it like took him to like starve to death. Like that was like all of the like scientific like care that anyone had about any
Right.
of the infected like up to this point. So it was interesting from that standpoint to see kind of like a truer like medical side of that. I love he also had some good like like needle drops on some records here because of course Dr. Kelson has like a sweet record collection because of course you would. What else are you going to do with your time for 28 years? So that's pretty good. You get some good drops there. Bringing in some tunes to the show. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good, and kind of sets the scene and foreshadows some things a little bit there, which is pretty fun. But yeah, eventually these two groups are going to collide, right? So the Jimmies are going to scope out. Dr. Kelson there, think that he is Satan, in fact, or going to pretend that they think that he is Satan, kind of depending on how you think Jimmy Crystal was really looking at that. And Spike all this time is like, "Ugh, I know who that is, but I can't really say that. So gotta keep my mouth shut here on that one. And they kind of come together, and um, that was probably maybe my favorite scene in the whole movie was kind of the introduction of Jimmy Crystal and Dr. Kelson when they first kind of come together because we know that Jimmy Crystal is a very unhinged person, and we know that obviously Dr. Kelson is not the devil. So how is that going to go? And they're both such good actors there, and they have this conversation, which is kind of nice and quiet. Not something that we've really had hardly at all since kind of the first film. Like
Mm.
even in the previous 28 years later, there's not a lot of like long conversations that people are having, right? Because we're going on this quest and trying to survive and figure things out. But they have like an actual like sit down, like a campsite chat. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Dr. Ian Kelson, like for a guy who's been by himself for pretty much all of 28 years, we think, right? He's very calm, because he's a doctor. And so he was like, "Oh, you're a Satanist. Okay. Well, I'm not Satan." And he's like, "Oh, I know, but I'm gonna kill you if you don't help me." Like, because once again, they can't possibly know that you're not Satan. So here are the rules. And so they come up with this like kind of agreement, right? Where they're gonna go at night, and he's gonna tell them, Dr. Kelson's going to pretend to be old Nick, and he's going to be like, "Great job, Jimmy, doing a great job. I need you to grow in your number or grow in your strength. Everybody needs to do everything that you're saying because you're doing all the right things. Skinning people alive, it's awesome. Just keep going." And what I loved was when he comes back in the night with all of his Jimmies, right? The way Dr. Kelson like creates like these like little fire spurts, and so it everybody is, even if they're like, I don't know if this is true, they're like, I can't explain what's happening right now because
Right.
these things don't happen, right? And he's covered in iodine, so he's kind of red, and I love that. And it's not until Dr. Kelson sees Spike, because he's ready to be like, yeah, go ahead, go on your merry way. You're gonna go kill everybody. And he has a crisis of conscience, but it's not until he sees Spike where he's like, oh no, no, no. No, we can't do
Hmm.
this. I can't let you continue to behave this way. Like,
Yeah, and I love that because all the Jimmies are wearing masks, right? So he doesn't recognize that it's Spike, but I think that he kind of recognizes that it's like a little kid compared to
yeah,
everyone
yeah,
else, and he goes over and takes the mask off, and
yeah.
obviously then sees that it's Spike, and he makes a declaration there to set him free, which sends Jimmy Crystal on an unhinged path there to that. I love like it's so like crazy and elaborate, and like it looks so amazing because you have these big giant like spires of bones and stuff like that. And there's just this like big ring of fire that goes off, and you have Ray Fine is just like going like bananas. He has like this big like buckets of like coal in there that's like shaking out and stuff. You got Megadeth just pumping through, which is so fun and like so unhinged. But then like you have to like step back and think that like none of these kids who are following Jimmy Crystal have probably ever heard that song. Or if they
Oh my
did, it
gosh.
would have been 28 years ago, right? That they would have heard the song. Like at the very least, of course, Spike never would have heard that song, so that's pretty wild. So I love that, and then it kind of culminates there with Spike and uh, Jimmy Inc. Aaron Kellerman's character kind of getting away there at the very end. But yeah, I loved kind of this culmination because you knew that this is where this was heading towards, like for a long
Mm.
time, that they were going to end up in those paths we're going to cross, and then when it does, it's pretty epic and pretty emotional, right? When he puts himself on the line there to let Spike go free to get him out of this situation, and um, he Dr. Kelson is very like humble and like very like appreciative, I guess, that death has come onto him now. I guess kind of at this point, like he'd fulfilled like his own like curiosity, I guess, about what had happened, to the world,
Mhm.
basically. And I don't know if he wrote that down. Maybe you should write that down, Medicine Man. If you if you find some cures, maybe go ahead and write that down. But that's pretty good. Do you have any kind of other thoughts or any other kind of things just about either the group of Jimmies or about Dr. Kelson or kind of that story? And then we'll get into kind of the little
The last
tacked
bit.
on tail end there. So.
Yeah, I really liked I did like the exchange because Samson goes off, right? He goes off, he finds this train, and you think he is now going to maybe even get reinfected because he's people are running after him as if he is not infected. And that's kind of where we left until he shows up and they have this moment, Ian and Samson. Um, I think that you really Ray Fiennes does such a great job. He's such a good actor, but he does such a great job of playing this character that has been by himself for so long, that has that scientific mindset, that cares about humans enough to like build this temple. He still has a picture of him and his wife, right? And we see that a lot where he's had 28 years to miss her and think about her. And so while he was doing the good work of, burning the bodies and putting together this temple and, trying to figure out what we could do about this virus, he's also probably just really relieved that he's finally
Mhm.
done. And you really feel that. Um, and he and Samson, like Samson doesn't try to kill him. He picks him up and like, carries him away. And uh, I don't know. It definitely it was emotional, even though, Samson is supposed to be this. brain eating zombie and you know, I don't know. I really loved that aspect of it because if you were given an opportunity to stay alive, you'd want to stay alive, but also what kind of life was that like and again, how he seemed just so tired and so ready and unafraid to meet his end.
Hmm.
I really loved that. And he's just as unafraid as he was the first time he met Samson, which we see, right? Where he's ready to shoot him if he has to. But he's like, if this is it, this is it. Like every day, I think I'm probably going to die today, and I'm ready every day. And it's just kind of, I don't know. I loved that, and I thought that was really interesting how this was weaved in from all the different movies culminating into that kind of moment. I thought that was
Hmm.
cool. I really hope he writes it down. I do hope that he wrote it down.
Hopefully, I wrote it down. Um, yeah, exactly. To explore kind of that mindset you mentioned, we get a couple of shots there of pictures of like him and his wife there. He's got up in his little bunker room place that he lives in there, and then it starts you wondering like it was she like the first of this bone temple that he created and all that sort of stuff, and that's why it's so like important to him to keep doing that to pay honor to the people who had lost their lives. Like all that stuff is amazing. Jimmy is left on an upside down cross, which is kind of this sigil, I guess, that the group had used, that the necklace that he had used, and so that's kind of interesting because it doesn't specifically show that he had died, I don't think, at the end. So, is Jimmy
Right.
going to get down off of that cross for the final chapter of this? I don't know for sure. I love that he sees kind of Samson there with the visage of Satan as he's there upside down on the cross, which is kind of interesting because I don't know why he would have been like hallucinating to that end. So just because he's probably bleeding out, I suppose, because he got stabbed. So yeah, so all that stuff is really good, really good. So spoiler warning here for the last, I don't know, 30 seconds or so of the movie, minute of the movie. I don't know. So you might have seen this already, but if you have not seen this, spoiler, go ahead and we'll talk to you next week on Drinking Movies. Um, Cillian Murphy is still around. He survived 28 years.
He has, and apparently he has a daughter who he's teaching history to. They
Jim.
have a little
Good old
house.
Jim.
Good old Jim. Another Jimmy. We've got another Jimmy.
Oh,
He
snap.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It wasn't lost on me. That irony was not lost on me. I feel like so this scene is really amazing because he's like trying to tutor her and get her ready for a test, and you don't know where this is, you don't know when this is. You're all of a sudden very disoriented, and then you realize that this universe is the same universe. Like Jimmy never got out. He never was found. The end of 28 days later, right? They create this giant help us or hello. It was a hello that they wrote on the
Hmm.
side of this hill out of sheets. And they see a plane coming by and they think that they're rescued. That's how you think it ends 28 years later, 28 years ago, in 28 days later. That is not how it ended. They just left them there. And so you don't know, you don't see Jim's partner, you don't, but you do see her daughter, his daughter, and they hear a bunch of calamity. They hear a lot of stuff outside. They go take a look, and who do they find? But Ink, whose name is Kelly, and Spike. They're trying to run away from a group of infected people, and they're completely unaware that Jim and his daughter Sam live there. And Sam asks, "Well, are we going to go help them?" And he's like, of course we are," which
Of
is
course we are.
amazing. Of course,
Yeah.
I mean, I the symbolism here is amazing. First of all, it's really cool to see that Jim's still alive. It's not really cool that they were left there. Doesn't surprise me. Governments are amazing, but I will say that Jim has maintained his heart, right? Even
Mhm.
after 28 years. And if you see the first one, your faith in humanity is really screwed up by the end of that because you're like, gosh, people will do anything. But he still's like, yeah, we're gonna go help them. Absolutely. And that's how it ends. And gosh, I hope they make another one now because I want to know what happens.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the what Jim did in the first one really, right? And they get to that compound there with the faux army kind of thing that's going on there. And Jim like literally takes on like this whole like army battalions worth of people to get what was her name, Selena,
Hmm.
and little girl Hannah out of there. We didn't get Hannah in at the end of this, so we don't know if Hannah is still around. Maybe she just wasn't in the room when they were there. Maybe she was out doing something else. I don't know. So that's good. And obviously, I if there's to be a third one of these, and presumably there will be, we'll get to follow along with that, and that'll be pretty kind of amazing little capstone on that. We were watching the movie. And the whole time I kept thinking to myself, because I had seen like things that said, Cillian Murphy was back or, part of this. And I was like, he hasn't been in any of this stuff. Like where is he? And then, yeah, it kind of ends with that. And it's not like a post-credit thing. That's great. Just put it in the movie. If it needs to be in the movie, just put it in the movie. So, so there you go. So that was
Hmm.
good. That was good. And this movie was good and I loved it a lot. So, Michaela, we should have probably led with this, but we saw 28 years later, last year, apparently like 6 months ago, and we saw this. And I think that we both kind of had a similar outlook. You can correct me and you can definitely give me your kind of thoughts and opinions on this. But when the trailer came out for 28 years later, I'm like, I can't wait to see that. That looks incredible. That looks amazing. I love it so much. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And then we saw it, and it was pretty good. I like 28 years later. That was pretty good. And then the trailer for 28 years later, the Bone Temple came out, and I was like I'm interested to see like where the story goes because like the Jimmies were so unhinged at the end of it. So I'm interested to see like what the deal is with that. But I was way less excited for this one than I was for the first one. And this one like it blew me away. It blew me away. Like how much I've been thinking about this movie ever since Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. 100% agree what you said, what Brian said, everybody. Yeah, and I don't know if it's because honestly, I don't know if the first one didn't hit because the trailer for the first one was just so good. If you have a chance, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the trailer, if this is like 2046, go find the trailer and then you tell me that I'm wrong because the trailer is the scariest freaking thing I've ever seen. It's
Mm-hmm.
terrifying. I mean, and the second time it just got scarier. The second time I saw the same trailer, okay? I mean, it is so good. And so I feel like it's I don't know if it was because the trailer was too good. And so we were we had a lackluster reaction to the first movie that was actually pretty good. Um and then the second movie's trailer was just okay. And so then we were blown away. I don't know if it's that or if the movies really are that different.
Mm-hmm.
They are very different, but I don't think they're different in terms of quality. Does that make sense? Like
Mm-hmm.
they tell very different stories. The first one is like a story of a child who's really trying to help his parent and dealing with death as a very young child, juxtapose like another child that dealt with death in a very different way and became a psychopath. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
and this one is like how a doctor kind of comes to terms with a disease and how like the infected are actually infected and then survival amongst the psychopaths. So they're very different stories, but I think you're right. I mean, I loved this movie. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
we're 3 weeks into 2026, but it's the best movie I've seen so far, and I've just had to watch a bunch of Oscar short lists, and this one so far is real good. It's real up there. It is haunting. I still think about it. I think about all the layers of it. It's yeah, it's way better than just a regular like a zombie apocalypse movie. It's real good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that it was just a continuation kind of the first film. It wasn't like trying to be a sequel, and I think that was probably the intent, right? I think that it said basically it was going to be this like trilogy of three films to tell this story. And yeah, on one hand, I think I mean, I definitely liked it better than the first one. I hate to, say that it is better than the first one or even to like compare them because they were trying to do two different things, right? The first film is meant to introduce you to all of these characters. It's supposed to get you to connect with the character of Spike and to like have this great empathy for him because if you don't and if you don't do that and you just kind of open with Spike there in that, swimming pool to have this like knife fight to the death. I mean, you feel bad, right? You're like, oh man, I feel bad for that kid, but you've just spent, 2 hours of going on this journey with Spike of, losing his mother and, going on this crazy trek to go like meet this apparently like mad Dr. Kelson who's out there that everyone in his village is afraid of and all that stuff. So I think that it had to, kind of build the foundation for the Bone Temple to really like flourish. And I think that it did a really good job with that. Apparently they filmed this about like 2 or 3 weeks like after they wrapped for 28 years
Mm.
later, which is why it could come out so long. And I don't know if that's going to be the case for this next one. I mean, I suppose you have Ray Fine there. You're like, okay, we can get all your stuff done, right? We have the set built already for where you're going to be, and now that that's kind of over, and we'll see where the story kind of continues from here. So I think that's pretty good. And hands down, the absolute best part of the movie is at the very end when you see kind of the infected are chasing Spike and Kelly there. Uh, that music from 28 Days Later comes on, all the movie theater sound system. It's incredible. You're like, oh my God, like it gets you like so amped up. And I'm really sad that there's not a third part of this to go watch right now because I really want to go do that.
Yeah, and Danny Boyle, I love you, dude, sir. Thanks for making great movies. But if you could have done this third one already, that'd be awesome. Because apparently he has not. And so now this is going to be a 3-year thing that I'm definitely going to wait for, and I'm definitely going to go see. But come on, man, you had to know that this was going to do well enough for you to make the money to make another one. I mean, look, maybe there's other things happening and we don't know, but I was definitely left wanting more. Definitely left wanting more. You did a great job there. Killian Murphy looked amazing. And I saw that he was a producer. So hey, I mean,
He has
yeah,
pretty good hair, I will say, for being out
28
alone
years
for
without
28 years without
shampoo or
like
hair
without
products or
conditioner. Yeah, come on, get
Rogaine
out of
with
here.
minoxidil. There's none of that happening.
Yeah,
So
Dr. Kelson was out, taking all the morphine for 60 miles. Gilly Murphy was out getting all the like Aquanet in 60
right.
miles
Yeah.
around his place. So that's pretty epic. It did make me really, really want to go back and rewatch the first one, actually, so I could, rewatch all the stuff with Jimmy because I know Spike and his dad, who I can't remember his name, in the first film, they go into like that like cabin and it's all like graffitied up there. It has with like the upside down cross and the Jimmy. So I wanted to go back and see like what kind of like foreshadowing stuff was in the first one that we didn't know that I
Mm,
can't, really place that, right? We get kind of the scene of him watching the Teletubbies, we get kind of the stuff with his dad there, but I would like to like rewatch that now with
mm,
the lens
mm.
of kind of knowing how that story plays out. I think that would be pretty good. And Oscars are right in the way because I would almost be tempted to go see this again. So I don't know, we'll see. But this is really good. If you haven't seen this and like things that are like fairly violent are okay with you, you should go see this. It was really good. Watch
Yeah.
just watch like watch like the last, I don't know, like half hour of the first one and then go see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you probably yeah. Yeah. It was very good. It is very violent. I will say. Even for me. And I watched a lot of stuff and I was like, "Woo, okay. All right." The sound editing is pretty great in this, and that's all I'm going to say there. Yeah, go watch this. It's not very often that Brian will say, "Let's go watch something again in the theater." So, take that to heart, everybody.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. So I think that's going to wrap it up here for 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Hopefully, you've had a chance to see it. And if not, and you were wanting to, hopefully, we didn't spoil it too much for you out there. And hopefully, you decide to have an Old Nick cocktail because it's always fun. I love when we do like a cocktail that's super old, just to kind of get like the vibe of what cocktail scenes would have looked like like 100 years ago, almost 100 years old, the Old Nick. So that's pretty cool. So if you've had one of those, if you had another fun cocktail at your movie theater or any other 28 years later themed drinks, send those our way. You can tag us on all the social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to see pictures of the cocktail that Michaela made, get the recipe, episode recaps, all that stuff can be found on our website. It's www.drinkthemovies.com. And that's where you're going to want to go. It's probably not up yet as of recording this, but very shortly after this, we'll be getting the Oscar Pick'em going up there. So you want to make sure you go and get your Oscar picks submitted. We have quite a bit of time before Oscars, so I understand if you want to, get a couple more watched before we make those picks. But check out drinkthemovies.com. That's where you'll find that. Over on Patreon, that's where we do our bonus stuff. We do our live chats. We do our hangouts. We do cocktail chats and talks and post pictures and all that stuff over on Patreon. It's patreon.com/drinkthemovies. We appreciate our patrons so much. So check that out. Thank you so. And I think. Yeah, that's all the things. So, Michaela, where can people make sure they're getting the finest podcast movie cocktail podcast around? Where can they get subscribed and get all of our episodes, all that stuff?
You can find us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. We do 2 drops a week, the deep dives like the one you just heard, and then we talk about the box office stuff in the lobby bar, series that are coming out, movies that are coming out. It's all good there, and we do a really easy cocktail that anyone, even you, can make. If you like video games, even if you don't like video games, please go check out Drink the Video Games. It is every month we get notices that it has made the top 5 or the top 10 video game podcasts. It's real good. Go listen to it. I pop in, give you a cocktail. It's really fun. Brian does an amazing job there. Either way, subscribe. There's a subscribe button on whatever platform that you're listening to us on. Press that button if you want to get more of our stuff, because it really helps us get all the Drink the Movies, Drink the Video Game stuff out there.
Absolutely. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, if you could leave us a review, that definitely helps somewhere in the algorithm that no one understands, but it does help, I've been told. So please do that. We'd appreciate that. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with another movie next week. I don't know what we're doing next week yet. Maybe we're going to be talking about 28 years later, the Bone Temple again. Maybe, I don't know. So let's go ahead and end this one right here. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time on
Drink
Drink
the
the
Movies.
Movies.